Who are you under there? Revelers at the Floribama Mullet Toss sing and dance with a unicorn playing Michael Jackson on guitar at the beach. But they can't stand not knowing who's under the hood. Are you famous? You goddamn right I am. The hot April day was supposed to end with the Battle of Winterfell watch party premiering on Game of Thrones that night. But the long night turned out to be much longer than our unicorn anticipated. It turns out parking at a gas pump isn't the best place to sleep it off, and a mixture of embarrassment, despondence, and knowing no family members could afford the bail saw our unicorn refuse his one phone call. Resigned to make Escambia County Jail his new home. How could I know that short ride from the gas station to the jail would be a watershed moment that would propel me farther than I ever thought possible? I'm Rob Corker, a fourth-year journalism student here at the University of Denver, and you are listening to Rocky Mountain Reverb, which is a podcast meant to amplify the voices from DU and the Colorado community. This episode is about one DU student's journey from the jail cell to the dean's list. When you live in your car, losing your license is a whole nother level of homelessness. And when your probation officer says you can't work around alcohol, all those years of bartending experience ain't worth shit. The state of Florida also said I wasn't allowed to be around alcoholics or drug addicts, so my beloved family and friends in the area would be getting a 1-year-long reprieve of me. My best option was to move 300 miles away to live with my mom in the bustling metropolis of Anniston, Alabama, which my probation officer reluctantly agreed to. When I saw the laundry list of hoops to jump through to get my license back and stay out of jail, I actually told my public defender I would rather just do 6 months. She told me I'd still have to complete this litany of bureaucratic BS and talk me into probation. So here I was, a 31-year-old dude, living with my mom, again. No friends, no booze, just a year of sobriety to look forward to, and some home-cooked meals. The first thing I had to do was get a job, which was stipulated by my probation and the massive costs of fines and sobriety programs. So I walked 3/4 of a mile to a restaurant called Hubbard's off Main, where I would bartend. Shh, don't tell my probation officer. It wasn't a party atmosphere like the Redneck Riviera on the Gulf Coast, but I still got to talk craft beer and make terrible martinis every now and then. It just so happened that my income tax had paid off the last of my defaulted student loans that year, so I was eligible to get a Pell Grant. There was a satellite campus for a community college 3 miles away, and I figured with nothing better to do, school could be fun. I love to learn, and after a short 12-year hiatus from the classroom, maybe I would enjoy it. It takes about an hour to walk 3 miles. That's a good amount of time to mentally prepare for the day's social interactions and go over the course material in your mind. And listen to some tunes to get in the zone. I had a couple of classmates my age, but most were probably 19 or so. Some were focused and some didn't give a shit, not that I'm judging. Hell, I'm 31 with no driver's license, no friends, and no buzz, but if I had any one of those three, I wouldn't give a shit either. Beyond having a natural curiosity and an abundance of time to kill, I had one major advantage over my classmates. I am a completionist, gaming nerd. My Xbox gamer score is over 100,000. If that doesn't mean anything to you, congratulations, you're an actual functioning adult. That gamer score represents my love of jumping through hoops to complete esoteric tasks and get high scores. I would have never thought the obsession would translate to schoolwork, but it did. I wanted a perfect score in everything I did, and that's basically what I got. Also during that time, I bugged the Municipal Performing Arts Center next door to my restaurant job until I was hired there as a stagehand. They got famous musicians there all the time, though they were usually over the hill. But still, I was working in music, something I'd always dreamed of. And I usually used my back, but eventually I got to use my ears too. As for school, I took 15 hours in the fall, 15 in the spring, and 19 in the summer during COVID lockdown. Combined with the 12 hours from Troy University a decade and some change prior, I had enough credits to graduate. And I had survived sobriety, community service, and level 2 alcohol education classes. Something funny happened during that time, too. I had a teacher ask me to meet them after class. And that had happened many times before, but not in a long time, and it was never a good thing. Rob, have you ever considered teaching? I want you to consider it, at the university level. I've got a friend who's a professor, and I think you've got a mind like his. You've got a mind for it.
I had never had a teacher say that before. I had only ever been told that I was fucking up and wasting my potential. So it was honestly not something that I had ever considered. Ever.
I realize if you love to learn and you want to keep doing it, you'll eventually probably have to teach. I didn't know that then, so all I said was, "Aw, shucks, Mr. Hamilton, I don't know." But he said, "Just think about it." Someone believed in me. Not a family member or a friend, but someone judging solely on scholastic merit. That was the real beginning of my education. I began to cautiously wonder what doors education might open and how to turn my competitive advantage into money and security. With a COVID fog of uncertainty still looming, I decided to take a music theory class that fall instead of graduating. Despite being a lifelong guitarist, I was insecure about how little I knew of theory, so that was another dream for me. Somehow wanting to take that class was parlayed into an audition for the school's jazz band and then a 2-year scholarship. At this point, I'm 32. Who gives a shit about graduating? I'm finally getting to learn, and I'm doing it for free. Well, not really for free, because I'd gotten so good at gaming educational bureaucracy that I was actually making more money through scholarships and grants than by working. Shit was unreal. For those 2 years, I curated my own liberal arts education, taking virtually every literature and humanities class the school offered, 4 semesters of private guitar and music theory, and a year of art history. I played in the jazz band, took private voice lessons and classical piano lessons. I joined and became an officer in every club that would have me. Where I'm from, and at my age, opportunities like this don't come around often. Or ever, really. I wouldn't waste it.
During that time, I got to know more instructors, and they got to know me. They knew I was there for the love of the game, and that I obsessed about my grades and being top of the class for no other reason besides hubris and being opportunistic. Mrs. DiBiase taught music theory, and on days when the one other student in that class for Music Theory 2, 3, and 4 was absent, we talked about what it means to have a classical liberal education. Dave Murdoch nurtured my curiosity with a humanities class that had a new subject each week, ranging from film noir to Greek philosophy to the War of the Worlds radio broadcast. I applied at 23 different universities, none of which in the Southeast region, and I spent a small fortune on transcript fees. We are sorry to inform you. Northwestern was where I wanted to go most for their prestigious journalism program, but if we're being honest, it's because George R.R. Martin went there. If they taught him how to tell stories, then I wanted to learn there too. This is probably worth mentioning now. I am obsessed with A Song of Ice and Fire, the Game of Thrones book series. I'm so obsessed, I put an extra B in my name just like Robb Stark. And it turns out you can just add letters to your name and no one gives a shit, so that's nice. Anyway, I was shocked that of the 23 schools I had applied to, only 3 offered money. Boston University, Rutgers, and the University of Maryland. Only Boston offered a full ride. I made it to the second round of interviews for Yale's Adult Learner Program, but again, we are sorry to inform you. I had a 4.0 GPA on enough credits for a bachelor's degree already, and had been officer at least 4 clubs and done volunteer work for all of them. I jumped through all the hoops, and it was frustrating not to get into the Ivy League school that my ego demanded. But I was content to make Boston my home. Until I met a girl who lived in Denver. A DU alum, actually. I applied just before the deadline and emailed admissions to tell them the story that I just related to you, except for the parts about the DUI and the unicorn stuff. My lady and I made grand plans for if I was offered money here, and if I wasn't, we would obviously be together either way. And a month and a half later, I got the email. Full ride to the University of Denver. Fuck Boston. I got my associate's degree, packed up my dachshund and a couple guitars, and moved to Denver. When you do something because you love it, and not because you feel you have to, people can tell. As a 30-something student, education isn't the journey, it's the destination. If I could go back and talk to 19-year-old me, I would say, go ahead and keep fucking around. Move where you want, work dead-end jobs or entry-level jobs. Because when the time comes, there's nowhere else you'd rather be than in the classroom. So that relationship didn't work out, but everything else has. I just got back from studying abroad in Sweden and Croatia, and guess what? I went to Dubrovnik, where they filmed a ton of Game of Thrones. I climbed to the highest point the public is allowed in Fort Lovrienets, which was King's Landing in the show, and I looked out at the Adriatic Sea. I thought about how far I'd come from that jail cell in the town I grew up in to the top of King's Landing, a world away. And I thought to myself, I am a fucking unicorn. This episode was produced by me, Rob Corker. Thank you to our managing editor, Carlos Jimenez. I'd also like to thank the University of Denver's Media, Film, and Journalism Studies Department. Additionally, I would like to thank freesound.org users Hexatonic, Ego Massive, Mr. Rat for Food, Audio_Stock, Raleigh SFX, and Inspector J, Blue Dot Sessions users Tango Rosino, One Such, High Horse, and the Sweet Hots, and Shockwave Sound user Fleur de Lis for music and sound effects. And finally, thank you, the listener, for sticking around and listening to my story today.